How are my friends in YouTube land today? Or as we might say, quarantine land, because we're all in the same boat on that one. That's for sure. I wanted to get on here and just kind of start talking a little bit about what I did on this van. I'm not getting too deep right now. I've got to put some things together, step-by-step process, but kind of a little preface of, of this whole thing, and just some things that maybe it's my take, my perspective on how I built my van. And there's a lot of people out there building these vans. A lot of people have their opinion and their facts. Some people have advice way better than I do, I'll tell you. But one common denominator with everyone building these vans is simply this: every one of them are different. Every one of them are different. Everyone has their own twist on it. That's the cool thing about it. I don't think I've ever, that I can recall, seen any van build the same as another. They're all different. They all have their own unique characteristics because we're all different, and that's what it's going to be. You're going to put your own twist to what you want out of it. Not, you may like my build, but not everything about it you want or like, and it's okay. I don't think I wanted everything about every van build that I ever saw. I'll give you an example. Is that last summer I'd mentioned this lady, her name was Judy. I went to the Tiny Fest Northwest, north of, actual south, not north, south of Portland, Oregon, near Salem, Oregon this past summer, back in August. And I walked through her van, and she's the one I talked about that has the cruise and comfort air conditioning system, and I saw that thing in action, and I'm telling you, it's amazing. Pricey, but it's well worth it. I loved her. When I walked into her van, I was like, this is what I want. But, I had an option of my desk there or some seating on that wall or some sort of a table, but not everything about her build I really wanted, but there was a lot of it. Ideally, the setup and what I was looking at, she had a guy named Mark from a company called Nomadic Customs. He does his outfitting up in Portland. Guy's amazing. Amazing builder. He sat there and talked with me for a while. The nicest guy. A hell of a van build when it came to the detail, the woodwork this guy did. Amazing detail of woodwork. So, like I say, it was an amazing van, but, you can go as far as you want in this build, So I guess my first part of advice would be simply this. If you decide to build in depth as I did, if you're going up and you're putting up heavy walls and a lot of stuff, this is not a one-man job. Now, I'm not saying some people can't do it. There are some people that can. But this is a two-person job. You need somebody who's going to hold things. But in my case, I needed somebody that was really good on these cuts and these angles that could kind of help me see some things that I didn't in my whole vision of this whole thing. And that guy was my friend Clarence Fortune. And again, Clarence Fortune, thank you so much. You were a rock star on this, man. I told Clancy, I said, man, thank you. You say the word, you need help with anything, I'm with you. I'm there for you, man. That's a friend right there. Friends like that are hard to come by in this world, and he and his wife are wonderful people, and I love them dearly. Thank you again to the both of you. Thank you for her for putting up with it, because I could tell there was sometimes she would go, y'all almost done for the evening? I could tell you. He's worked all day, and he said, bring the van over. Let's get some work done tonight, because we got started with this. All of a sudden, he was like, I'm hooked. I want to get this done. This is cool. I want to see what we create. When I started this, I told the other day, he looked at the van and was like, this guy's crazy. Because he told me, I thought you were crazy as hell when we first started doing this. But when we got this thing created, it is amazing what we did. And it is truly amazing, because at least to the next thing I will tell anybody who's looking to build one of these vans. Number two, not one thing in these vehicles, and I don't care unless they make one, unless it's maybe this vehicle, the back of this RV that's made in the factory, nothing in that van, or these series of vans that you have a choice to buy from, or whichever you choose, nothing is square or level. Not one thing is square or level. So you have a challenge of trying to figure out, okay, you're going to have a gap here and a gap here. This isn't going to line up 100% with the other side that won't. All these little variables. You have to figure out, Do I just want to live with that gap, or do I want to cover it with some trim? I will tell you, in my van, not everything is covered with a trim. You do see gaps because of where I could not cover up, like those back vents in my van. I pointed out the other day, you cannot cover those vents to breathe up, and there's a gap like that on the top going up because it rounds off. Now, that's not to say that you can't frame it and square it off and do what you want with it, or something that will contour and cover it. That depends on how thin of material you want to use. That's up to your creativity on this whole thing and how you want to do that. But nothing is square level, so you will find a challenge on that. Now, that's not to say everybody is going to build as in depth as I did. There are some people that just want to build a platform, put some totes in there, and go with it, and just have a portable power system. Which, listen, I still think that's a cool idea. Don't get me wrong, I think it's really cool, because I'm going to do an in-depth another review on it. I want to talk more about how wonderful they were. Is that company called Energy? I have an Apex all-in-one. You saw it in the video, down on the floor. That's a backup. That's a portable power system. If I didn't want the heavy inverter and the appliances at hand that I wanted to use, like an induction cooktop or that microwave, I probably could just run everything with that Energy. Put 500 watts or 300 watts, which I've got, my bad, 300 on the roof, and the other 100 or more, or whatever I wanted, into that Energy, and it would keep it charged. On a side note, Energy is coming out with expansion batteries on that thing. So there's about 90, a little over 90 to 100 amp hours on that thing now. So they're going to have expansion batteries that will be very affordable compared to big, deep cycle batteries. So you could run it with that and put the lighting you want in there, and it's ideal. You can do that. I mentioned a guy, I've mentioned him several times here, about the fans, the Caframo fans. I'm going to show more detail in those. I'll talk about where I got those, which is Amazon. But that guy Chrome Valdez with that channel in Vancouver, Canada, he calls his channel Van City Van Life. Some of you are viewers of me know him because you were on his channel and discovered me. A really good guy, but he gave good advice, and he has some friends that are outfitters that said, you know, you probably don't want to go gung-ho until you know 100% what you want out of that van. Start small, start slow. And he did this. He just put a little platform, some totes, had a few things, didn't even have it insulated from the beginning. So there's an option, you know, if you want to do that, you know, if you live in an area where it doesn't get blistering hot, just kind of feel it out and see what you want out of your space. The thing about my space, I built it, which is number 3. I built my van, I knew, one, what I wanted. I knew everything that I wanted and I needed out of it. Space to do my music, a studio space, great place to sleep, adequate storage, sorry about that, and, you know, minimal of kitchen things, you know, the ideal things that you need when you're living. I built that thing with system of plus nuts where I could unbolt those cabinets with a few screws. I could pop that stuff out at a moment's notice. That bed frame is all modular. I can take an impact wrench and start pulling. He and I were cranking on that bed frame, getting it built. We sounded like a NASCAR, you know, pit crew, man, going at it, because a good impact wrench, we're going to list tools. That's one thing you're going to need. So, but, you know, it's all what you want to do. If you don't like the big garage configuration, and storage is not as big as the issue as it was for me, you can do your bed configuration however you want. You got a lot of people doing Murphy beds, twin type beds set up, Murphy's at the side, more cabinet space. I've seen some amazing builds that people have done things they wouldn't even believe they could have done. So it's possible. I will say that there's some of you maybe in that Facebook group called the ProMaster Build Out. Thank you tremendously for your advice on some questions I had. That if you're looking to build out a ProMaster van, or whatever van type you're looking to build out, there's a Facebook group out there for that. And there is a group, if you're doing a ProMaster, called the ProMaster Build Out. It's a Facebook group. Great group of people with great insight, man, that really will help you. These guys, there's no egos, man. You get in some of these groups, man, someone always has to say a smart ass comment or try to roust you or try to, you know, every group you get in, you're going to have people like that. I'm not going to lie. There's probably a couple in that group I was in I just ignored and said, yeah, I think he's just trying to be a jerk, or, you know, or you know, one of these guys that, well, mine's better than yours kind of crap, or I could care less. you're more than welcome to your opinion. What you want to do. You get some people that feel they have to correct you, and it's like, it's not what my post is about. Maybe I didn't convey something particular, and that's okay, but all you have to do is ask. But anyway, I'm off tangent. There are groups and there's YouTube videos, a lot of things. I'll tell you what, before I built my van, I think I spent 4 years or more just writing notes. I mean, you would think I had a master's degree in this, and I still wasn't prepared for some of the things I was up against. So somebody, if you're not good with certain things, get them to help you. And we'll talk about, when I talk about the electrical, something like that especially, be very careful. Please don't just go arbitrarily do that unless you know what you're doing. If you have an all-in-one system and you understand on that all-in-one what your limits are and what you can and can't do on that, and the company you buy it from will tell you. Anything you do, you just be careful and know what you're doing, because it gets can be a little touchy. It's like your house. I have a degree in electronics engineering technology. I knew, but with solar, I asked the questions and did my research, because it's a different beast, but it's a part of electricity. I understand some principles and things, but there are things about solar you've got to understand how to install it. There are things about charge controllers. It's like anything else you do. There's specialties in certain fields of work or expertise. You need to just know and understand. I don't care. I've been doing this a long time, but it just doesn't, cross my mind at all to not ask questions. I'll ask questions no matter what I know, because there's always that one thing you don't know that can get you nipped. So just be careful. Understand what you're doing here. And that goes for when you start putting screws in the walls for this thing. So just, do your research. It'll help. So next on this list is, there are going to be some tools you need. If you go anything past what I mentioned that Chrome Valdez did from the start, or anybody else of just building a platform on a cot and some totes and just kind of going with it and makeshift this and that. If you go into an in-depth build like this, there are tools that you are going to need. And I'm going to try to list them all, what I used. And most of you, if you've built, you already know. One, you're going to need an impact drill. And my best advice is, so it's not so much you're fumbling with two drills, get an impact drill. You can get some bits for the impact drill as well as your screwdriver bits for the impact. Just get a really good, I've got a Cobalt 24 volt impact drill that I got from Lowe's. It was $100. Worked like a champ. Has settings 1, 2, and 3 with how much torque you're going to put on it. Now I will tell you, and it's a really good piece of advice people told me, and even Clancy was like, we got to be careful how we're cranking on these things. If you're going into metal on that, you need the highest impact, but slow down or you'll spin that hole that you drilled out and you'll have to drill a new hole. Or you could go right through wood and tear your paneling up. Just be careful. Sometimes you're going to have to dial that down when you're screwing in slower. It's a good impact, but you're going to have to be careful and not tear up what you're trying to do. It could be a very frustrating process if you don't understand from the beginning how you're going to use an impact drill. Next, you'll need a good jigsaw, maybe a miter saw, and you're going to need a skill saw. You're probably going to use that jigsaw more than you will a skill saw. That's very important. The jigsaw will be important. You need good metal blades as well as some that cut wood and other material. The metal being, you're going to cut a hole. If you're putting a max air fan in the roof, you're going to cut a hole in that by a 14 by 14 hole. You're going to need to do your research on how you cut that. Be very careful. But you're also going to need that jigsaw. There may be a time where you may have to have a heavier saw, and we've had to use that. I didn't have that. My buddy Clancy had a heavier saw that cut steel and metal that I'm glad we had, because we really needed it a couple of times. I'll talk about that in the bed frame when we built that. Easy process, but it didn't count for about that much inch for the walls coming in, and we had to back up and punt for a second on that deal. So you're going to need those two. You're going to need a couple good screwdrivers, flathead, good Phillips head. I usually use the ratchet ones, but you're also going to need a few good crescent wrenches that are different sizes, and a really good socket set. You're going to need it, especially if you do like I did with the bed frame with the hex bolts and stuff and all that cranking. You're going to need that. If you do plus nuts like I did, you're going to need a pneumatic plus nut tool, and whatever size plus nut you decide to go with. I went with the 5/16 plus nut, and it's a standard. And I went with my bolts, the hex bolts and everything. I went 5/16. And I will tell you that do your research on how long you need those, because again, you don't want to go through the side of the outside skin of your van on that either, like you would screws. I'd say the average length I used was 3.5 inches. About 3.5 on the frame. Into the wall we used about 2.5. I'd say 2.5 went into the wall because you had 1.5 inches on that metal and then another inch, so it needs to bite. So 2.5 inch on that deal. Screws, the average screw uses 1.5 inches into that wall, 1 inch. And then we use maybe a 9/16 inch screw for very small things. There was an occasion we needed a longer screw, but it wasn't often. So that screw would be if you're bolting, if you're getting furring strips on the back of cabinets and you plus nut those in, and then you need to screw those from the cabinet, you're going to need maybe a 2 inch, 1.5 inches, 2 inch. I'm just touting off my head. I will tell you that you will buy more screws and more bolts than you probably buy anything in this build. That's another thing I'll tell you. You're going to be buying a lot of screws and bolts. You're going to be doing it. There's no way around it. You're going to need self-tapping screws, probably the biggest thing you do. Self-tapping, countersink self-tapping screws. So wood screws, self-tapping, countersink screws will be your best friend. Most all of these, except what we put the wall panel on and the trim, were countersink. The wall panel had the round flat, and when I get to that part of it, I'll show the screws, and we'll do that. So you're going to need good vice grips. Time will come, a good set of vice grips, maybe an adjustable wrench from the plumbing, but also if you have to crank on, get a screw out that you can't quite get with your screwdriver, or if you spun a screw, these impact drills will break the head of a screw. It's going to happen. It's going to hit a kink on some thick metal, and that screw will pop. We found that out when we were getting these brackets in our solar panels. These screws will pop. So you're going to need that. Another tool. You're going to need a good soldering iron if you're going to do any soldering. But mostly you'll need electrical crimps, wire splicers, and you'll need a good set of needle nose pliers as well as wire cutters. So usually they'll make wire crimps with cutters with them, whatever works best for you. But that wire splice, you're going to need heat shrink tubing. You're going to need plenty of that, and you need to get the right sizes. You're going to need to get a lot of whatever size you tend to use when you use these DC fuse boxes and various other electrical connections. You're going to need crimps for the wiring together, different types of your choice. You're going to need ring terminals of different sizes, as well as when you do your 4-gauge cable, you're going to need, when I get in electrical, I'll talk about my 4-gauge cable that I ordered. I ordered on Amazon by how many feet for a red and black. You're going to need ring terminals for those, and that's maybe a 3/8 ring terminal for 4-gauge cable. We'll get into that wire size and all that when I do the electrical. You're going to need a good magnetic tool. It's kind of a telescopic magnetic tool, maybe with a mirror, in case you drop a screw somewhere you need, or something happens and you need to get to it. That's going to happen. You've got a lot of wells where you insulate a screw could drop, and that'll rattle around and you'll never find it in there if you don't go get it initially. So you're going to need that. As I talk about each build part, I'll talk about tools used on that as well. So, but not to mention, you're going to need a good hammer, and you're going to need a good rubber mallet. If you decide to do the flooring that I do, you're going to need to, like vinyl plank, a good rubber mallet or some soft hammer to tap that flooring together. But you'll also need it to tap various other things. So it's a handful of tools you're going to need to do this. And there's going to be a few others. We'll get to all that stuff. So, but anyway, I will tell you to be patient. But these builds generally don't take near as long as you would think. It just depends on what you want to do. I think if we had more time, if Clancy had more time, which is, I understand he didn't, we could have gotten this done in a couple of weeks. But it took us 7 weeks. I think 7 weeks for me to build it. And that was only because I had a little more time to do it around what I do. So it went quicker than I thought. We knew where our challenges would be, and it's there. You'll have a few. So it just depends on what you want out of a van. The one thing I'll tell you, my next piece of advice is try not to and don't expect this to be just like your house. In other words, I've seen van builds where people thought they had to have this big old kitchen sink, double sink, and all this stuff, and I'm like, you're killing space for other things that you need. If you don't need anything else, that's fine. But I've seen them go back and go, I needed a good desk space, and I didn't know what to do. Well, that big old standard kitchen cabinet you got is taking all that space away from you, folks. So you've got to think about that. Think about the space you need and everything you need. So at this point, when I start showing this, there's only a few things I haven't done so far with this build. And one is, I haven't gotten the swivel seat up front. I'm still working out the curtain issue. My sliding door window is on order, so we're going to get that put in. That's next to be done. And the air conditioning system. Don't know when that'll be, but it'll be soon. I want to sell the RV here first. That's what I'm in right now. I'm charging up the RV, making sure everything's good there. But you just want to, figure out what you need in a van. So, but as I show it, there's a few things I still have to do. But that's the things I did initially, is figure out what I wanted out of it and how I was going to put it in there. And how did I want to put it to where I had options to kind of take it out and do something else if I wanted to. The plus nuts came handy in that deal. So, with that said, one thing I did was even in this RV, the first thing I did was my studio space, my workspace, I realized I really don't require a whole lot of space to do this because I'm on a laptop with a few peripherals of equipment. Little room if I have to grip my guitar and do a little work. If I'm in there, it'd be perfect. I worked that space out first and foremost. I measured everything. I made a little tabletop space to where I could bring it in and put it on the table that I put. And I knew how much width I needed. I knew how much depth, because I knew how wide the van was. I knew when I walk in, I need space where there's going to be a seat or a bench. That's the fourth thing that I forgot. I've got to get a seat or a bench. I don't know how I'm going to do that with that desk now that I'm talking about it, but that was the first thing I did. A room to do that, and know that everything that I'm doing is conversion of space. Conversion of space. So just know what you want to do. You'll be able to get it. So from this point forward, what I'm going to do is, I think starting maybe first of the week, I'm going to break down from the start of this process. I'll start with what van I got, preparation, insulation, stuff like that, and then I'll go to the flooring. As the order that we built this is the order I want to talk about. If you want to go back and look, I talk as I went along and the things I did on this build, and I showed some video. I didn't show video of us actually doing a lot of the stuff. Just didn't have means or time to be able to just start running a time lapse or video. I could have, but I didn't. So we'll break this down, and hopefully it'll help. But that's just my take on my build and how I did it, and maybe it'll work for you. But anyway, I'm gonna jump off here. I've got to get this thing charged and head out. So thank you so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Be cool. Bye.